last night, just from a betting perspective, was obviously Porzingis has an incredible game one. Looking at the finals MVP market, he goes from 50 to 1 before the series to plus 650 to win finals MVP. So not only does he make a big jump, but it also brings other guys down. So Jason Tatum, who is minus money to win finals MVP, is now plus 110. You have Jaylen Brown at a better number. Luka Doncic at a better number if you still like Dallas to win the series. So not only does Porzingis odds make a crazy jump, but these guys also fall back a little bit. So your kind of thoughts on that Porzingis performance, and now do you see a bet that you like maybe when you're looking at finals MVP?
I'm still all over Tatum here because you look, if you're betting the Mavs, I think you're taking Luka and nobody else. If you're betting the Celtics and you think they're going to win, it makes sense to look at a couple of these guys. And getting Tatum at plus money, he didn't do much last night. It wasn't like up until the third quarter run, and then they started to pull away again. But it's just a matter of looking at their best player and the guy that I consider to be their finisher. I don't know if we're going to get like KP being that. Look, there's some animosity there. We've heard like Chandler Parsons' comment, which Luka kind of said, "Oh, that's BS. We're fine. I've only talked to Chandler twice." But I'm sure KP was ready to get in. He's got the mismatch, though, so he's going to have an advantage all series. I just don't know if he's the guy that's going to fill it up the entire time. Now, if he gets on a heater, yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I still think Tatum's my guy.
I totally agree with you. I really like Tatum now. I mean, I liked it at minus 120, minus 125. Now that it's at plus 115, though, I mean, to me, that's the play. Totally agree with you. If you like Dallas, Luka's the bet. I mean, he's the play at plus 350. But Jaylen Brown's now plus 300. He moved up a little bit, but Tatum falling back at plus 115. I think that's where the value is. I totally agree with you. Tatum last night, 16 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block. He did have 6 turnovers, though. Jaylen Brown had 22 points, but again, Porzingis the story, 20 points in just 21 minutes of action off the bench. I agree. I think Tatum is the play. Obviously, they didn't need him to score last night. You know, just the way the game played out because they kept going to Porzingis and he had the hot hand. They built that big lead in the first half, and then they didn't really need Tatum to score. They needed him to defend. They needed him to rebound. He was a little bit of a facilitator as well. So I agree. I think that's where the bet is. Certainly an interesting market, though. And, I mean, what do you make of Porzingis, Jeremy? Like, obviously, I don't know if he's going to do this every single night, but a lot of people felt like the Celtics are a much different team with him out on the floor, and it's hard to argue that after watching what he did last night.
Yeah, when he's healthy, when he's interested, I mean, he's just as Phil called him, he's a unicorn. I mean, that's a special player when you look at his size and ability to shoot from the outside. He's a very solid defensive player from a block standpoint. You saw the great block last night that he had. He's a good rebounder. I mean, there's a lot to like about Porzingis, especially fitting in on that Boston team. I think he fits in there perfectly. He was so annoying with the Mavericks. I mean, I just got so frustrated with him being on the team because if it wasn't an injury, I remember the one playoff game he got tossed. And by the way, I remember it so much because I was in a live final for DK, and it was during COVID, so there was nothing live about it. I was home. I got my fleece in the mail instead of getting a trip to like Puerto Rico. So basically what happened was he got kicked out for defending Luka in the start of the second half after he was having like a monster game. So I didn't win as much as I was hoping to win with KP being a part of my lineup. That's the year that Mitchell and Jamal Murray went off, and they had that great battle in round one. But
Yep.
I just think he's a special player, but you got to have the right group around him. I do buy into a little bit of what Chandler Parsons said about the animosity between those.
Finals MVP, he has taken a huge jump. He was 50 to 1 to win it before the series started. Now he's plus 650 at BetMGM. But because he jumped, and you got some other guys who have fallen back to the pack a little bit. Tatum, who was minus money, is now plus 110. Jaylen Brown is plus 300 as well. So were you invested in this market at all, maybe before the series started? And now with that Porzingis performance and with the odds board currently where it is, have you gotten invested in this market?
I took some Jaylen Brown at plus 900 during the Eastern Conference Finals. So I kind of saw the tea leaves. Like Jaylen he's played great all playoffs. I do think that he is very live for this award. Now that the gap is down to where he's plus 300 and Tatum is better than even money, I don't know if this is the right time to get in on this market because Jason Tatum numbers wise was not great, right? Like you look at his actual statistics, he had 16 points, 11 boards, and 5 assists, but he was plus 19. That was the second best mark on the team, and he just seemed like he was making the right play all night. So I think that even though it wasn't the best statistical game for him, if you ask me who the Celtic best player was in game one, I probably would say Jason Tatum. He could have very easily had a triple double. He had 14 potential assists in that game per NBA.com. So I think if anything, now is probably the time to buy low on Tatum.
Obviously, a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. Ravens Chiefs, Jeremy, your initial thoughts on this game? I'm sure you've talked about it plenty there, doing radio in Baltimore.
Yeah, look, we've talked about this quite a bit because it's that whole thing of, the Ravens game one against the Chiefs. And it's funny, like talking to, I went on a Buffalo Bills radio station and up in their network, and they were kind of feeling the same way Ravens fans are, just looking over at the Chiefs like, damn it, what do we got to do? What do we got to do to get past these guys? And they beat them in the regular season. They haven't got them in the postseason. If you go back to last year's AFC Championship, it drives me absolutely insane to talk about it. I think the Ravens had one of the best teams I've seen in the NFL from an analytical standpoint, what they were able to do on defense with lesser than players. I think Mike McDonald's a genius, so Seattle's got a good one. But going back to them only running the ball 6 times with their running backs in this game and also back in the 2019 playoffs, it just doesn't make sense to me. So they go out and get Derrick Henry, and now it makes for a very interesting season opener. I do like the Ravens as a dog here, but I'm just hoping this isn't okay, you guys beat us in the AFC Championship, now we get you back in the first game of the regular season. No, because it all still matters in the postseason of can you get it done or not. So Ravens have question marks about a pass rush, and that's not something you want to have against Pat Mahomes. But I like the fact that you've got 2 coaches that are very good in getting prepared. One worked for the other one, in John Harbaugh and Andy Reid. That's why they're so good after bye weeks.
It's going to be interesting to see how people spin this game depending on who they're backing, right? Because if people like the Ravens, I think they're going to use your point, obviously, the revenge factor. They're going to talk about how good Lamar is against the spread as an underdog and how he's usually really good in these kinds of games. But I think the reason I like Kansas City, especially under the field goal, is just because of all the turnover that the Ravens are going to have to deal with in week one. I mean, Jeremy, as you know, they're replacing 3 offensive linemen that were huge contributors for them last year. They have to replace Mike McDonald, who was so good against elite offensive teams. The Chiefs didn't score a second half point last year in the AFC title game. And obviously, Lamar in week ones of the season in the NFL, outside of that opening game against Miami where they put up 59 points, it's kind of been sluggish starts. The last couple years against the Texans, the Jets weren't their best games. They got the win. It was pretty convincing. They covered the spread, but it wasn't a dominant performance. So they've been a little sluggish out of the gate. Kansas City obviously lost to Detroit last year in the season opener. I think it's going to be a close game. Ravens-Chiefs games are always close. I think if you want to tease the Ravens to 8.5, I don't think that's a terrible option. I think if you want to just wait to bet this game live, I think that could be a good choice as well. But I think that the Chiefs minus 2.5 are probably the call. I also think, Jeremy, honestly, with the way that everything going, I mean, do you think that this game's just going to come down to a Harrison Butker field goal? Just doesn't it feel like justice? That's the way that this is trending. I can just picture Mike Tirico now, NBC. Here we go, the man of the offseason, all the storylines, and it comes down to a game-winning kick from him. So I think it's going to be a close game. But under the field goal, I like the Chiefs.
I'm just happy for Butker's wife that she won't have to have dinner on the table by the time he gets home because it's a night game. No, and just with this, I'm a big fan of the Ravens in week one. And if there's not any huge significant changes, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on them. I'm not biased from that standpoint of hey, I'm betting the Ravens every week. I will bet against them when I find the right spots. But to your point, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of turnover on this team. They drafted Andrew Voorhees out of USC last year. He was hurt. He should have been a day 1 or day 2 pick, probably not day 1, but day 2. But he tore his ACL, and they kept him all year, so he's going to slide right in. They draft Rosen, whoever. out of Washington. Their tackle to come in and play right tackle, and he played right tackle because Michael Penix Jr. is left-handed. So, like, he was blocking his blind side. So it feels like they can slide in and be okay there, but until they play together, we don't know. A lot of defensive replacements, too, guys that maybe weren't as important as most people think. I think the biggest loss is Jadeveon Clowney, just because I don't think they replaced him. They're looking in-house, and I think there was a lot of scheme last year. So if Zach Orr, the new defensive coordinator, can take something from Mike Macdonald, and Mike Macdonald gave him high praise, but we still have to see it out there. And then I'll go back to, I'm not a big trend guy, but for whatever reason, opening night, I mean, we go back to last year, the Lions beat the Chiefs outright. The teams that are coming off the big Super Bowl wins and having the party, they usually don't cover week one. And I'm not saying like it's not something that you bet just like, oh yeah, week one, I'm just betting against the team that won the Super Bowl. But we've seen teams come out and have really sluggish games on that opening night. So I just have to wait and see. I mean, it's a long ways away. There's a lot of different things that could happen from now until then. The Ravens are a big post June 1st, picking up the, as I call it, the dented can theory, the street free agents that don't affect your compensation picks because they're big on that. So I think it's going to be a great matchup, though, and a fun game. And I'm sure Taylor Swift will be there as well.